Lucas Reyes never expected that helping a stranger would change everything. A hard-working mechanic in Manila's Tondo district, he spent 3 years raising his daughter Sofia alone, stretching every peso between rent and her school supplies. His hands are permanently stained with engine oil, his back aches from double shifts, but his heart remains generous. That's why, on a rain-soaked Tuesday night, he doesn't hesitate to scoop an unconscious woman from the gutter outside an upscale hotel. She's wearing a designer dress that costs more than his monthly income, but to Lucas, she's just another person who needs help. He carries her to his modest apartment, makes her soup, and asks no questions. What Lucas doesn't realize is that the woman sleeping on his threadbare couch owns half the buildings in his neighborhood and holds the power to save or destroy everything he's worked for. But will the truth about who she really is tear them apart before love has a chance to bloom? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced through the pre-dawn darkness of the cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Tondo. Lucas Reyes rolled over, his calloused hand slapping the snooze button with practiced precision. 4:30 in the morning, the same time he'd been waking up for the past 3 years, ever since Maria had passed away and left him to navigate the treacherous waters of single parenthood. He sat up slowly, his spine protesting the movement. 32 years old, and already his body felt like it belonged to a man twice his age. The second-hand mattress sagged beneath his weight, springs creaking in familiar protest. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mrs. Santos next door, preparing for her own early shift at the textile factory. The sounds of their working-class neighborhood were already stirring to life, tricycles puttering down narrow streets, vendors calling out their morning offerings, the distant hum of the city that never truly slept. Lucas padded barefoot across the cold concrete floor to the small window that looked out over their courtyard. The view hadn't changed in the 5 years they'd lived here. Laundry lines strung between cramped apartments, children's bicycles propped against peeling walls, potted plants that somehow thrived despite the urban grime. It wasn't much, but it was home. More importantly, it was all he could afford on a mechanic's salary. He glanced toward the second bedroom, where his 6-year-old daughter, Sophia, still slept peacefully. Her door remained slightly ajar, a habit he'd developed after Maria's death, needing to hear the steady rhythm of his daughter's breathing to calm his own anxious heart. Sophia was his world now. His reason for the double shifts and the aching joints and the constant worry about making ends meet. The small kitchen adjoined their living room, separated only by a breakfast counter that Lucas had built himself from salvaged wood. He moved quietly, measuring coffee into their ancient percolator, the same one Maria had bought at a garage sale 7 years ago. She'd been so proud of that 5-peso find, polishing it until it gleamed like new. Now it sputtered and wheezed, but Lucas couldn't bring himself to replace it. Too many memories lived in that dented aluminum. As the coffee brewed, he reviewed his mental checklist for the day. Tuesday meant his morning shift at Rodriguez Auto Repair, where he'd been working for 8 years. The pay was decent enough to cover rent and utilities, but not enough for Sofia's growing needs. Her school supply list sat taped to the refrigerator, a constant reminder of how expensive raising a child had become. Pencils, notebooks, art supplies, a new uniform because she'd outgrown last year's. Each item represented hours of overtime, meals skipped, dreams deferred. After the garage, he'd grab a quick lunch and head to his afternoon job at the call center downtown. 4 hours of technical support for an American software company, his English rusty but adequate. The work was mind-numbing, but it paid well enough to justify the commute and the headaches from staring at computer screens. Between both jobs, he managed to bring home enough to keep them afloat barely. The coffee finished with a final wheeze, and Lucas poured himself a cup, adding just a splash of condensed milk. Real cream was a luxury they couldn't afford, but the sweet condensed milk made the bitter brew palatable. He'd learned to find small pleasures in simple things, a necessary skill when your budget allowed for few indulgences. Papa! Sophia's sleepy voice drifted from her bedroom. Good morning, anak, he called softly, using the Tagalog endearment that always made her smile. Stay in bed for a few more minutes. Papa's getting ready for work. But she appeared in the doorway anyway, her dark hair tousled from sleep, clutching the stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion since her mother's death. Sophia had Maria's eyes large and expressive, the color of dark chocolatey and the same stubborn streak that had made Lucas fall in love with his wife in the first place. "Can I have pancakes today?" she asked hopefully, rubbing her eyes with small fists. Lucas's heart clenched. Pancakes meant using their emergency flour supply, the one reserved for lean weeks at the end of the month. But the hopeful expression on his daughter's face made the decision easy. "Of course, Princessa, but you have to brush your teeth first, okay?" Her face lit up with joy, and she scampered back to the bathroom they shared. Lucas began mixing pancake batter, adding extra water to stretch the mixture further. He'd make it work, he always did. That was what fathers did, what providers did. They found ways to make their children smile, even when their own hearts were heavy with worry. The morning routine unfolded with practiced efficiency. Sophia emerged from the bathroom with her hair brushed and her school uniform laid out on her bed. Lucas flipped pancakes while she set the small table with their mismatched plates and cups. This was their time together, precious minutes before the day pulled them in different directions. "Miguel's mama said she can pick me up from school today," Sophia announced, pouring syrup onto her pancakes with the concentration of a surgeon. "She's making adobo for dinner and wants to know if we can come." Miguel Santos lived 3 apartments down with his mother, Elena, who had become something of a surrogate grandmother to Sophia. Their friendship had been a godsend. Elena was retired and happy to help with childcare, while Miguel, also a single father, understood the daily struggles of raising children on a limited income. "That sounds wonderful," Lucas said, though he felt the familiar pang of guilt at accepting another family's generosity. Elena refused payment for watching Sophia, insisting that neighbors looked after each other. Still, Lucas tried to contribute when he could, fixing Elena's leaky faucet, helping Miguel with car repairs, bringing home extra groceries when his budget allowed. "Miguel's teaching me to play chess," Sophia continued, syrup dripping from her fork. "He says I'm getting really good. Maybe I can beat you soon, Papa." "I look forward to the challenge," Lucas smiled, though he couldn't remember the last time they'd had a quiet evening for chess. Between work and household duties, his time with Sophia felt increasingly precious and scarce. After breakfast, Lucas gathered his tools for the day. His toolbox had belonged to his father, a master mechanic, who had taught Lucas everything he knew about engines and honest work. The tools were old but well maintained, each one earned through years of careful saving. They represented his livelihood, his connection to his father's memory, and his hope for providing Sophia with a better future. "Papa, will you read to me tonight?" Sophia asked as he prepared to leave. "Of course, Anak. We'll finish that story about the princess and the dragon. The one where the princess saves herself?" "That's the one." Lucas kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo baby, scented because it was cheaper than the grown-up brands. But Sophia didn't mind. She was remarkably adaptable, his daughter, perhaps too adaptable for someone so young. The walk to Rodriguez Auto Repair took 15 minutes through streets that pulsed with early morning energy. Street vendors called out their offerings: fresh pan diesel, coffee, newspapers still warm from the printing press. Children in school uniforms hurried past, backpacks bouncing with each step. The familiar symphony of urban life surrounded Lucas' jeepneys rumbling past, construction workers beginning their day, the distant sound of the radio playing classic OPM hits. The garage occupied a corner lot that had seen better days, paint peeled from its concrete walls, and the sign reading Rodriguez Auto Repair had faded to pale blue letters. But inside, the workshop was Lucas's domain, organized, efficient, and filled with the honest smell of motor oil and determination. 3 bays held vehicles in various stages of repair, from routine maintenance to major overhauls. Early as always, Lucas, called out Ben Rodriguez, the owner who had given him his first real job 8 years ago. Ben was approaching retirement, his hair now more silver than black, but his passion for quality work remained undiminished. "Morning, Ben. The Honda needs its transmission work finished today, and Mrs. Cruz is coming for her alternator replacement." "Good, good. You know, I've been thinking about our conversation last week, about you maybe taking over more of the business side of things." Lucas nodded, though the prospect both excited and terrified him. Ben had been hinting at semi-retirement, perhaps turning over day-to-day operations to Lucas. It would mean more responsibility, potentially more income, but also greater risk. Small businesses in their neighborhood struggled constantly, always one major expense away from closing their doors forever. The morning passed in the comfortable rhythm of skilled work. Lucas diagnosed a stubborn electrical problem in a 15-year-old sedan, replaced brake pads on a delivery truck, and performed routine maintenance on vehicles that their owners depended on for their livelihoods. Each repair was executed with care and precision. His reputation depended on quality work, and satisfied customers were the only advertising he could afford. During his lunch break, Lucas sat in the small office behind the garage, reviewing the numbers in Ben's ledger. The business was stable but not thriving. Equipment needed updating, the building required repairs, and competition from larger chain shops was increasing. Still, they had loyal customers who valued honest work and fair prices. If he could take over the business, maybe expand their services, hire another mechanic, the possibilities both thrilled and overwhelmed him. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Sofia doing great. She helped me water the plants, and we practiced math. Don't worry about dinner, plenty of adobo for everyone." These small kindnesses from friends and neighbors made the difficult days bearable. Lucas typed back his thanks, adding a reminder to himself to pick up some fresh bread on his way home. It was a small gesture, but he'd learned that gratitude was best expressed through action. The afternoon shift at the call center was routine fielding questions about software bugs, walking customers through troubleshooting steps, occasionally dealing with frustrated users whose patience had worn thin. Lucas had developed a calm, helpful phone manner that earned him positive reviews from supervisors. The work wasn't fulfilling, but it paid the bills and allowed him to use his English skills, rusty though they were. By 6 o'clock, he was walking home through streets now bustling with evening activity. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air carried the mingled scents of street food and exhaust fumes. Home beckoned Sofia's laughter, Elena's cooking, and the simple pleasure of family dinner shared with people who cared about each other. As he turned the corner toward their apartment building, Lucas reflected on his life's rhythm. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was honest and purposeful. He was raising a remarkable daughter, contributing to his community, and building something meaningful from the materials he'd been given. Maria would be proud, he thought. They'd created something good together, and even in her absence, that goodness continued to grow. Tomorrow would bring the same challenges: bills to pay, work to complete, a daughter to nurture and protect. But tonight, there would be adobo and laughter, and perhaps a game of chess with Sofia. In a life built from such moments, Lucas had learned to find his measure of wealth. The rain began as Lucas finished his evening shift at the call center, fat droplets that splattered against the windows of the downtown building. By the time he reached the street, the drops had multiplied into a steady downpour that sent pedestrians scurrying for shelter under awnings and into doorways. Manila's rainy season could be unpredictable sometimes, gentle mists that cooled the air, other times torrential storms that flooded streets within minutes. Lucas pulled his worn jacket closer and quickened his pace toward the jeepney stop. The fabric, thin from years of washing, offered little protection against the growing storm. Water seeped through his shoe-soled leather that he'd resoled twice but couldn't afford to replace. His feet would be damp for the rest of the evening, but he'd learned to ignore such minor discomforts. Bigger worries demanded his attention. The jeepney ride home took longer than usual as traffic crawled through flooded intersections. Lucas watched the city transform through rain-streaked windows. Neon signs from hotels and restaurants reflected in puddles, creating abstract art from commercial necessity. Street vendors packed up their wares, protecting goods from the downpour. The contrast between gleaming high-rises and ramshackle neighborhoods seemed more pronounced in the rain, as if the storm washed away pretense and revealed the city's true disparities. He was thinking about Sofia, probably safe and dry at Elena's apartment, maybe helping with dinner preparations when the jeepney lurched to a stop 3 blocks from his destination. The driver shouted something about flooding ahead. Lucas sighed and joined the other passengers in stepping back into the storm. 3 blocks wasn't far, but in this weather, every step would be a battle against the elements. The rain had intensified, drumming against concrete and metal with increasing fury. Lucas kept his head down and walked quickly, dodging puddles that seemed to appear from nowhere. The expensive hotels and restaurants of Malatti District stood like islands of light in the storm, their uniformed doormen safely sheltered under grand awnings. He tried not to think about the irony. People inside those buildings probably spent more on a single meal than his family's weekly grocery budget. It was outside the peninsula Manila, one of the city's most prestigious hotels, that he saw her. At first, he thought it was debris, something dark and shapeless near the gutter, where rainwater rushed towards storm drains. But as he drew closer, his steps slowed. The shape was too regular, too human. His heart rate quickened as recognition dawned. It was a woman, unconscious and alone, lying partially in standing water. Lucas glanced around quickly. The hotel's entrance stood 50 meters away, bright and welcoming, but no doormen or security guards were visible at this side street. Pedestrians hurried past with heads down, focused only on escaping the storm. In a city of millions, it was possible to be invisible even in crisis. He knelt beside her, rain immediately soaking through his pants. She was young, maybe late 20s, with delicate features and dark hair plastered against her face. Her dress, even in the dim streetlight and rain, was clearly expensive. The fabric had a quality that spoke of designer boutiques and prices Lucas couldn't imagine. Jewelry caught the light, earrings that probably cost more than his monthly rent. But right now, she was just another human being in trouble. Miss, can you hear me?" He touched her shoulder gently, checking for responsiveness. Her skin was cold, and she smelled of expensive perfume mixed with alcohol. Too much alcohol, judging by the way she'd collapsed here, but she was breathing steadily, which relieved his immediate fears. She stirred slightly at his touch, mumbling something incoherent. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Drunk, definitely, but not dangerously so. Still, lying in the rain and cold could turn a manageable situation deadly quickly. Lucas looked around again, hoping to see someone from the hotel or perhaps a taxi that could take her somewhere safe. But the storm had driven most people indoors, and the few vehicles on the street were focused on navigating flooded roads. He pulled out his phone, thinking to call for emergency services, but stopped. What would he tell them? That a wealthy woman had too much to drink and needed help? In a city where real emergencies strained resources, this might not qualify for immediate attention. The rain continued its assault, and the woman's breathing seemed more labored. Decision time. Lucas had learned long ago that when faced with someone in need, hesitation could be fatal. He'd grown up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other, where ignoring suffering wasn't an option. "Okay, miss, I'm going to help you, all right? I'm taking you somewhere safe." He slipped one arm under her shoulders and another under her knees, lifting her carefully. She was lighter than expected, but her wet dress and his own rain-soaked clothes made the task awkward. She stirred again, mumbling what sounded like protests, but didn't resist. The walk to his apartment complex took 20 minutes that felt like an hour. Lucas's arms ached, his back protested, and twice he nearly slipped on wet pavement. But he kept moving, driven by the same instinct that made him check on elderly neighbors during typhoons and share his lunch with hungry children in the neighborhood. Other residents of his building barely glanced at him as he struggled up the stairs with his unconscious burden. In their community, Helping strangers wasn't unusual, it was necessary for survival. Mrs. Santos peeked out her door and offered to help, but Lucas assured her he could manage. The fewer people involved, the better, until he understood the situation. Inside his apartment, Lucas laid the woman on his small couch, the same threadbare furniture he'd bought second-hand when he and Maria first moved in together. The contrast was starker designer dress against his worn upholstery, her manicured hands against his rough coffee table. Two worlds colliding in his humble living room. He found clean towels and gently dried her hair and face, checking again for signs of injury beyond intoxication. No cuts or bruises were visible, just the pallor and limpness of someone who'd had far too much to drink. Her breathing was steady, her pulse strong. She would be fine once the alcohol worked its way out of her system. From his small kitchen, Lucas prepared arroz calderish porridge that was perfect for settling upset stomachs. The familiar ritual of cooking calmed his nerves as he processed what he'd just done. He'd brought a complete stranger into his home, someone who clearly came from a different world entirely. Was he being foolish? Possibly. But he'd rather be a fool who helped someone than a practical man who walked past suffering. The woman began stirring as the porridge simmered. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding her features as she tried to focus on unfamiliar surroundings. What happened? Her voice was hoarse, cultured, with the slight accent of someone educated abroad. "You're safe," Lucas said simply, approaching with a glass of water. "I found you in the rain. You were unconscious. Drink this slowly." She struggled to sit up, accepting the water with trembling hands. "I don't understand. Where am I?" "My apartment. In Tondo. I'm Lucas." He kept his voice calm and non-threatening. "What's your name?" She hesitated, and Lucas could see her mind working, trying to piece together recent events. "I'm Arya. Arya Velasco." The name came out reluctantly, as if she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to share it. "Well, Arya, you're welcome to stay until you feel better. I made some soup, it'll help settle your stomach." She looked around the small apartment, taking in the modest furniture, the cramped space, the obvious signs of a working-class life. But instead of the disdain or discomfort Lucas might have expected, her expression showed something like wonder. "You brought me here, a stranger. You needed help." Lucas shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "Would you like some soup?" Arya nodded slowly, still seeming dazed by her surroundings and his kindness. As Lucas ladled the warm porridge into a bowl, he wondered what circumstances had led someone so obviously wealthy to end up unconscious in a gutter. But he wouldn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. Everyone deserved privacy, especially when they were vulnerable. What he didn't know was that in helping Arya Velasco, he'd just altered the course of both their lives forever. The woman sleeping on his couch held more power than he could imagine and more secrets than either of them was prepared to face. Sofia's voice pierced through the morning, quiet like sunshine, breaking through clouds. "Papa, there's a lady on our couch." Lucas bolted upright from his bed, momentarily disoriented. The events of the previous night came flooding back the rain, the unconscious woman, his decision to help a stranger. He glanced at his alarm clock. 6:15. Sofia was up early, probably curious about the unusual sounds she'd heard the night before. "Shh, anak," he whispered, padding quickly to Sofia's bedroom. "Yes, there's a lady here. Her name is Arya, and she was sick last night, so Papa helped her." Sofia's dark eyes were wide with curiosity and excitement. In her small world, visitors were rare and therefore special. "Is she better now? Can I meet her?" "We need to be very quiet, okay? She's still resting." Lucas helped Sofia get dressed for school, his mind racing through the implications of his guest's presence. How would he explain this to a 6-year-old? What if Arya was someone dangerous? But looking at Sofia's eager face, he pushed away his doubts. His instincts told him Arya posed no threat, despite the mystery surrounding her. They tiptoed to the kitchen, where Lucas began preparing breakfast with practiced quiet. Sofia, however, had no such restraint. "Good morning, Miss Lady," she called cheerfully toward the couch. Lucas winced, but Arya stirred and sat up slowly, Her designer dress wrinkled, but her composure gradually returning. In the morning light, she looked younger and more vulnerable than she had the night before. Her makeup had smudged, revealing natural beauty unmarred by cosmetics. "Good morning," Arya replied softly, managing a smile for Sophia, despite what was obviously a pounding headache. "You must be Lucas's daughter." "I'm Sophia Elena Reyes," she announced proudly, using her full name as she did when meeting new people. "I'm 6¾ years old, and I can read chapter books already." "That's very impressive," Arya said, and Lucas was struck by the genuine warmth in her voice. She wasn't just being polite to a child, she seemed genuinely charmed by Sophia's enthusiasm. "Are you having breakfast with us?" Sophia asked hopefully. "Papa makes really good eggs, and we have fresh bread from Tita Rosa's store." Lucas looked questioningly at Arya, who nodded gratefully. "If that's not too much trouble, I should probably eat something." "No trouble at all," Lucas assured her, though he was mentally calculating whether their food budget could stretch to include an unexpected guest. He added an extra egg to the pan and sliced more bread, determined to be a good host, regardless of the cost. Sophia chatted constantly during breakfast, apparently having adopted Arya as a new friend. She showed off her school books, demonstrated her ability to write her name in both print and cursive, and peppered Arya with questions about everything from her pretty dress to whether she had any children of her own. "No children," Arya answered to that last question, and Lucas caught something wistful in her tone. "But I think children are wonderful. You're very smart, Sophia." "Papa says I'm smart like Mama was." "Mama's in heaven now, but she watches over us." Sophia's matter-of-fact delivery of this information made Lucas's chest tighten, as it always did when she mentioned Maria so casually. "I'm sure she does," Arya said gently, and Lucas appreciated that she didn't offer empty platitudes or change the subject awkwardly. As they finished breakfast, Sophia pulled out a piece of paper and her crayons. "I'm going to draw you a picture, Miss Arya. What's your favorite color?" Arya looked around the modest apartment, the mismatched furniture, the carefully patched walls, the obvious signs of a life lived paycheck to paycheck, and something in her expression softened. "Blue," she said, "like the sky after a storm." While Sophia worked on her artwork, Lucas and Arya sat at the small kitchen table, drinking coffee from chipped mugs. The morning light streaming through their single window revealed details about his guest that had been hidden in the dim apartment the night before. Her dress, even wrinkled and rain-stained, was clearly haute couture. The fabric alone probably cost more than Lucas made in a month. Her shoes, though muddy, bore the unmistakable mark of luxury goods. Yet she sat in his humble kitchen as if she belonged there, sipping his weak coffee without complaint and watching Sophia color with obvious delight. "I should probably go," Arya said eventually, though she made no move to leave. "I've imposed on your kindness long enough." "You're not imposing," Lucas replied honestly. "But I do need to get Sophia to school and get to work. You're welcome to stay and rest if you need to." Arya looked uncertain. "I don't have anywhere to go, actually. I mean, I do, but it's complicated." Lucas didn't press for details. Everyone had complications, and strangers didn't owe him explanations. "The door locks automatically when you leave, but you can stay as long as you need to." "Papa!" Sophia called excitedly. "Look what I drew!" She held up her paper proudly. It was a family portrait of sword-stick figures representing herself and Lucas, but with a third figure added. A woman in a blue dress standing between them, with yellow crayon hair and a big smile. At the bottom, in Sophia's careful printing, were the words, "My family and Miss Arya." Lucas felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Sophia, that's beautiful. But Miss Arya might not want to be in our family picture." "It's perfect," Arya interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "May I keep it?" Sophia beamed and handed over the drawing. "You can put it on your refrigerator, like Papa does with mine." As they prepared to leave for school and work, Lucas found himself oddly reluctant to go. Something about Arya's presence had changed the morning routine, made it feel more complete somehow. Sophia clearly felt it too. She kept finding excuses to show Arya one more toy, one more book, one more treasure from her small collection of possessions. "Will you be here when I come home from school?" Sophia asked, as Lucas finally managed to get her backpack on her shoulders. Arya glanced at Lucas, seeking permission. "Would that be all right? I could help with whatever needs doing around here." Lucas studied her face. Whatever her story was, she seemed genuinely reluctant to return to her previous life. And Sophia was clearly enchanted with their unexpected guest. "If you want to stay, you're welcome to. But no pressure. You don't owe us anything." After dropping Sophia at school and exchanging the usual pleasantries with Elena, Lucas walked to work with his mind churning. What was he doing? He'd brought a complete stranger into his home, let her stay overnight, and now was apparently offering her extended hospitality. It went against every practical instinct he'd developed as a single father. But something about Arya felt right. The way she'd looked at Sofia note with the condescending indulgence adults sometimes showed children, but with genuine interest and affection. The way she'd accepted his humble hospitality without complaint or judgment, there was a loneliness in her eyes that he recognized, an isolation that echoed his own struggles with single parenthood. At the garage, Ben noticed his distraction immediately. "You look like a man with something on his mind." "Just thinking about life," Lucas replied, which was true enough. "Life has a way of surprising us." Ben observed, sliding under a pickup truck to examine its transmission. "Sometimes we think we know exactly how things are supposed to go, and then something unexpected happens that changes everything." Lucas spent the morning losing himself in the familiar rhythm of repair work, but his thoughts kept drifting to his apartment. What was Arya doing there? Was she gone already, disappeared back into whatever world she'd come from? Or was she still there, experiencing his simple life from the inside? He found himself hoping she'd stayed, not just for Sophia's sake, though his daughter's obvious delight in having a female presence in their home tugged at his heart, but for his own sake too. It had been a long time since he'd felt that spark of possibility, that sense that something interesting might be about to happen. As lunchtime approached, Lucas realized he was actually nervous about going home. What if she was gone? What if she'd left without a word, taking with her the strange energy she'd brought to their morning routine? But what if she'd stayed? What then? For the first time in 3 years, Lucas Reyes found himself genuinely curious about what awaited him at home. And despite all his practical reservations, he discovered he was looking forward to finding out. When Lucas arrived home for lunch, he found Arya sitting at his small kitchen table, Sophia's drawings spread before her, alongside what appeared to be every bill and piece of paperwork he owned. His bank statements, utility bills, and repair receipts were organized in neat piles, and Arya was making notes on the back of an envelope. "I hope you don't mind," she said quickly, looking up with something like guilt. "I was just trying to organize things a bit. I have a head for numbers, and I thought maybe I could help." Lucas felt a flash of embarrassment, then irritation. His financial struggles weren't entertainment for a wealthy stranger. "Those are private." "Of course they are. I'm sorry." Arya began gathering the papers. "I just thought you've been so kind to me, and I wanted to do something useful. I couldn't just sit here doing nothing." The embarrassment won out over irritation as Lucas saw the genuine remorse in her expression. She'd been trying to help, not pry. "It's okay, I'm just not used to," he gestured helplessly. "To people seeing your business," she finished gently. "I understand. But Lucas, you're doing an incredible job managing everything. Most people would have collapsed under this kind of pressure." She held up one of his carefully maintained ledgers. "You track every peso, budget months in advance, and somehow manage to save a little each month, even on your income. That's remarkable." Lucas felt heat rise in his cheeks. "It's not remarkable. It's survival. It's both." Arya's voice carried an authority that suggested she knew something about finances. "May I ask you something? What would you do if you could expand your repair business? If money weren't an obstacle?" The question caught him off guard. It had been so long since anyone had asked him about dreams rather than immediate needs. "I'd like to buy Ben's garage eventually. Maybe hire another mechanic, expand our services. We could do more complex repairs, maybe even some restoration work. He shrugged. But that's just dreaming. Dreams are important, Arya said seriously. They're what keep us moving forward. Lucas made sandwiches for both of them, using the last of their good ham. Tomorrow would be rice and eggs, but today he could still play the generous host. As they ate, Arya told him about her morning. She'd cleaned his apartment thoroughly, organized his tools, and somehow made their cramped space feel more spacious and welcoming. "You didn't have to do all that," he protested. "I wanted to. It's a beautiful home, Lucas, full of love. You and Sophia are lucky to have each other." There was something wistful in her tone that made him study her face more carefully. "What about your family? Don't they know you're missing?" Arya's expression closed off. "It's complicated." Lucas nodded, recognizing the boundaries. Everyone had family complications, but as they talked, he found himself drawn to her intelligence and insight. She asked thoughtful questions about his work, seemed genuinely interested in the technical aspects of automotive repair, and displayed a surprising knowledge of business operations. "How do you know so much about running a business?" he asked eventually. "I went to school for it," she replied vaguely. "Business administration, though I never got to use it the way I wanted to." After lunch, Arya surprised him again. "Would it be all right if I came with you to work this afternoon? I'd like to see what you do." Lucas hesitated. Bringing his mysterious houseguest to the garage seemed like a bad idea for multiple reasons, but something in her expression, eager and a little lonely, made him reconsider. "It's not glamorous work," he warned. "I don't need glamorous." At Rodriguez Auto Repair, Ben's eyebrows rose when Lucas arrived with an elegantly dressed companion. Despite her disheveled state from the previous night, Arya had somehow made herself presentable using Lucas's limited bathroom facilities. Her dress was wrinkled but clean, her hair pulled back simply, and she moved with a natural grace that spoke of excellent breeding. "Ben, this is Arya," Lucas said simply. "She's staying with us for a few days." Ben's knowing look suggested he'd drawn his own conclusions about Lucas's love life, but he was too polite to comment. "Welcome to our humble establishment, Miss Arya." "Thank you. I hope I'm not in the way." Lucas began work on a stubborn transmission while Arya watched with genuine fascination. She asked intelligent questions about the repair process, seemed genuinely interested in understanding how engines worked, and even offered to hand him tools when his hands were occupied. "You're a natural," Miguel observed, appearing from under the hood of another car. Lucas hadn't heard his friend arrive, but Miguel's presence meant the end of workday was approaching and the beginning of Lucas's anxiety about Arya meeting more of his community. Miguel Santos was Lucas's closest friend, a fellow single father who understood the daily struggles of raising children alone. But Miguel was also protective and suspicious of anyone new in their tight-knit circle, especially anyone who might hurt Lucas or Sophia. "Miguel, this is Arya," Lucas said, emerging from under the transmission. "Arya, this is my best friend Miguel." Miguel's assessment of Arya was immediate and thorough. Lucas could practically see his friend cataloguing details: expensive dress, manicured nails, cultured speech patterns, and drawing conclusions about her likely motives for slumming in their neighborhood. "Pleasure to meet you," Miguel said politely, but his tone carried a warning that only Lucas would recognize. "Likewise," Arya replied, seemingly unaware of the undercurrents. "Lucas tells me you have a daughter Sophia's age." "Carmen, yes. They're in the same class." Miguel's expression softened slightly at the mention of his daughter. "How long are you visiting our neighborhood?" "I'm not sure yet," Arya admitted. "It depends on several factors." Miguel's suspicious expression returned. "What kind of factors?" Before Arya could answer, Lucas intervened. "Miguel, could you help me finish this transmission? We need to get it running before Mrs. Cruz comes to pick it up." The rest of the afternoon passed in relative peace, though Lucas was acutely aware of Miguel's watchful presence. Arya continued to observe and occasionally help, showing no signs of boredom or impatience with the mundane work. When Mrs. Crews arrived to collect her car. Arya stepped aside politely, letting the men handle the customer transaction. "She seems nice," Ben commented after Mrs. Cruz left with her repaired vehicle. "Different from the usual women who hang around mechanics, though." Lucas wasn't sure how to interpret that observation. Different? How? Educated, refined. Not from around here, I'd guess. Ben's tone was neutral, but Lucas heard the implied question. What was someone like her doing with someone like him? As they cleaned up for the day, Miguel pulled Lucas aside. "Be careful, hermano." "Careful of what?" "Rich woman slumming in the poor neighborhood usually means trouble. For her or for you, I'm not sure which." "She's not," Lucas began, then stopped. He didn't actually know whether Arya was rich, though everything about her suggested wealth and privilege. She needed help, Miguel. That's all. And now, Lucas looked at Arya, who was carefully organizing tools with the same attention to detail she'd shown with his paperwork. "Now I don't know. But she's good with Sofia, and she's not causing any problems." "Yet," Miguel said darkly. "Just be careful, okay? Sofia's already attached to her. I can see it. And you—" He shook his head. "You're looking at her like she's some kind of miracle." "I'm not." "You are. Just remember that miracles usually come with a price." As they walked home together, Arya was quiet, seemingly lost in thought. The afternoon had clearly affected her somehow, though Lucas couldn't determine whether positively or negatively. "Thank you for letting me come with you today," she said eventually. "I learned a lot." "About car repair?" "About you, about how you work, how you treat people." She paused. "You're respected there. Ben trusts you completely, and even your suspicious friend clearly cares about you. Miguel's protective. We look out for each other in this neighborhood." "That's beautiful," Arya said softly. "I've never had that kind of community." Lucas wanted to ask about her life, her background, the circumstances that had led her to his couch, but something in her expression warned him away from such questions. Instead, he said, "You have it now, if you want it, for as long as you're here." Arya looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too, something that looked almost like longing. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea how much that means." As they climbed the stairs to his apartment, Lucas realized Miguel was right about one thing. He was looking at Arya like she was some kind of miracle, and maybe that was dangerous. But for the first time in 3 years, his life felt like it was expanding rather than contracting, opening up to possibilities he'd stopped allowing himself to imagine. Whatever Arya's story was, whatever had brought her into his world, Lucas found himself hoping she'd stay long enough for him to find out. 3 days had passed since Lucas found Arya in the rain, and their household had settled into an unexpected rhythm. Arya woke early to help prepare Sofia for school, contributed to household tasks with an enthusiasm that surprised Lucas, and spent her days organizing his life with the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing complex systems. But questions were beginning to surface, both from the outside and within Lucas himself. "Papa, is Miss Arya going to live with us forever?" Sofia asked over breakfast on Friday morning, her 6-year-old directness cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Lucas glanced at Arya, who was buttering toast with careful attention to the task. "That's up to Miss Arya, Anak. She's welcome here as long as she wants to stay." "I'd like that," Sofia announced. "She braids my hair better than you do, and she knows songs in English that Mama used to sing." The mention of Maria created a moment of silence. Lucas had noticed Arya's careful attention to Sofia's stories about her mother, never trying to replace Maria's memory but honoring it in small way-singing lullabies. Sofia remembered making arroz caldo the way Maria had taught Lucas, listening patiently to Sofia's elaborate bedtime prayers that always included keeping Mama safe in heaven. "Miss Arya has her own life, Princessa," Lucas said gently, "her own family and job and responsibilities." "Actually," Arya said quietly, "I'm between jobs right now. And as for family, it's complicated." That word again. Lucas was beginning to understand that complicated was Arya's way of closing off conversation about her past. But 3 days of cohabitation had revealed details that painted a puzzling picture. She received constant phone calls that she consistently declined to answer. Her knowledge of business operations was sophisticated and current, and despite her designer clothes, she seemed to have no immediate access to money she'd offered to contribute to household expenses, but claimed she'd need to sort some things out first. After dropping Sofia at school, Lucas found himself walking to work with growing unease. Miguel's warnings echoed in his mind, mixed with his own observations of Arya's behavior. She was hiding something significant, that much was clear. But was it dangerous? And if not dangerous, was it at least something that might hurt Sofia when the truth eventually emerged? At the garage, Ben pulled him aside almost immediately. "Lucas, we need to talk." "About what?" "About the woman who's been staying with you." Ben's expression was serious. "I got a visit yesterday from some men in expensive suits. They were asking questions about you, about whether you'd been seen with anyone new recently." Lucas felt his stomach drop. What kind of men? Corporate types? Lawyers, maybe, or private investigators. They left business cards. Ben handed him a sleek white card with minimal text. "Valuation Services International, Corporate Asset Recovery." "Asset recovery?" Lucas read the card with growing alarm. "What does that mean?" "It means someone's looking for something or someone that belongs to them," Ben said grimly. "And they think you might know where to find it." Lucas thought about Arya's expensive dress, her obvious education, the phone calls she wouldn't answer. "Did you tell them anything?" "I told them I'd never seen you with anyone. But Lucas, if this woman is in some kind of trouble, you need to know about it, especially with Sofia involved." The morning passed in a haze of distraction. Lucas went through the motions of his repair work, but his mind churned with possibilities. Was Arya running from something? Someone? Had he put Sofia at risk by bringing a stranger into their home? During his lunch break, he decided to confront the situation directly. He found Arya in his apartment, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. When had she gotten the password? And what appeared to be complex financial documents spread across the surface. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. Arya looked up, and he saw guilt flash across her features before she quickly closed the laptop. "Of course. What about?" "About who you really are and what kind of trouble you're in." Lucas sat across from her, noting how she'd organized his bills again, this time with detailed calculations and projections that he'd never asked for. "Some men came to my workplace yesterday asking questions about you." All color drained from Arya's face. "What kind of men?" "Corporate types. Asset recovery specialists, according to their business card." Lucas studied her reaction carefully. "Want to tell me what assets they might be trying to recover?" Arya was quiet for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly as she stacked the financial documents. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I can't," she whispered. "I want to, but I can't. Not yet." "Can't or won't?" "Both." She stood abruptly, walking to the small window that overlooked their courtyard. "Lucas, I swear to you that I'm not dangerous. I'm not a criminal, I haven't stolen anything, and I would never do anything to hurt you or Sofia. But you are running from something." "Yes, something that could affect my family." Arya turned back to him, and he saw the genuine anguish in her expression. "I don't know. I hope not, but I honestly don't know." Lucas felt anger building not at her situation, but at her continued evasiveness. "That's not good enough, Arya. I have a daughter to protect. If there's any chance that having you here could put Sofia at risk, I need to know." "You're right." Arya moved toward the couch where she'd been sleeping, beginning to gather her few possessions. "I should go. I never should have stayed this long." "That's not what I'm saying." Lucas surprised himself with the vehemence of his response. "I'm saying I need the truth. All of it." Arya paused in her packing, her expensive purse halfway off the coffee table. For a moment, Lucas thought she might finally tell him everything. But then her phone buzzed with an incoming call, and the moment shattered. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. "I have to take this." "Arya, Please, just give me 5 minutes. She stepped into the tiny bathroom and closed the door. Through the thin walls, Lucas could hear her voice, low and urgent, though he couldn't make out specific words. The conversation lasted longer than 5 minutes, closer to 15, and when she emerged, she looked shaken. "I have to go," she said simply. "There's something I need to handle. Will you come back?" The question hung in the air between them. Arya looked around the small apartment, at Sophia's drawings on the refrigerator, at the simple furniture that had somehow become home to her, at Lucas himself. "I want to," she said finally, "but I might not be able to." Lucas felt something crack in his chest. In just 3 days, Arya had become woven into the fabric of their daily life. Sophia adored her, and if he was honest with himself, he was beginning to feel something deeper than gratitude for her presence. "What should I tell Sophia?" "Tell her I had to take care of some business. That I'll try to come back if I can." Arya's voice was steady, but her hands shook as she folded the few clothes she'd borrowed from Lucas's meager wardrobe. As she reached for her purse, it tilted and spilled its contents across the coffee table. Lucas moved to help gather the scattered items: expensive makeup, a wallet that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget, breath mints, and a business card that made his breath catch. Velasco Properties, Arya M. Velasco, majority shareholder. The card slipped from his fingers as understanding dawned. Velasco Properties was one of Manila's largest real estate development companies. Their name was on construction sites throughout the city, on billboards advertising luxury condominiums, in newspaper articles about major commercial developments. Arya saw him reading the card, and her shoulders sagged in defeat. "Now you know." Lucas struggled to process the information. "You own Velasco Properties?" "My family does. I'm the majority shareholder, yes." Arya's voice was flat, resigned. "My grandfather built the company. My father expanded it. And now the board of directors thinks they can run my life along with my business." The pieces began falling into place. The expensive clothes, the sophisticated knowledge of business operations, the phone calls she wouldn't answer, the asset recovery specialists asking questions. "They're looking for you." Among other things, Arya sat heavily on the couch, her usual composure cracking. "There's an engagement they want me to honor, a merger disguised as a marriage. The man they've chosen is a business partner who would give the board more control over company decisions. And you don't want to marry him." "I don't even like him." Arya's laugh held no humor. "But in their world, what I want doesn't matter as much as what's profitable. So I ran. Stupidly, dramatically, like a child having a tantrum. I got drunk at the engagement party they threw without consulting me and wandered into the rain." Lucas sat beside her, his mind reeling. The woman he'd rescued from a gutter owned more property than he could imagine. The woman sleeping on his threadbare couch probably had more money in her checking account than he'd see in a lifetime. "Why didn't you just go home, to a hotel, anywhere but here?" "Because here is the first place I've felt like a real person instead of a corporate asset." Arya's voice was soft but intense. "Do you know what it's like to have every decision in your life filtered through profit margins and shareholder interests? To have people value you only for what you can provide them?" Lucas thought about his daily struggles, his constant worry about money, the way he had to budget every peso. "No, I can't imagine. 3 days with you and Sophia have been the most honest days of my adult life. You helped me because I needed help, not because of what I could do for you. Sophia likes me for me, not for my bank account. And you," she looked at him with an expression that made his heart race. "You've been kind without expecting anything in return." "Arya, I know it changes everything. I know you're probably thinking I've been playing some kind of game, slumming with the poor people for entertainment. That's not what I'm thinking." Lucas surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. "I'm thinking that it explains a lot, but it doesn't change who you've been these past 3 days." "Doesn't it?" Arya stood again, agitation clear in her movements. "I'm not just some woman who needed help, Lucas. I'm one of the wealthiest people in this city. My decisions affect thousands of jobs, millions of pesos. I have responsibilities you can't imagine. And I'm a mechanic who lives paycheck to paycheck in a two-bedroom apartment in Tondo. Lucas felt the weight of their different worlds settling between them like a wall. I understand why you have to go. But as Arya gathered the last of her belongings, Lucas found himself thinking about Sophia's drawing on the refrigerator, the family portrait that included Miss Arya. About the way Arya had organized his chaotic finances with professional efficiency but personal care. About the gentleness she'd shown in braiding Sophia's hair and the genuine interest she'd taken in his work. For what it's worth, he said as she reached for the door, these 3 days have been special for us too. Arya paused, her hand on the doorknob. Lucas, there's something else you should know. Something about your garage. What about it? The asset recovery people, they weren't just looking for me. They're also evaluating properties in this neighborhood for potential acquisition. Your garage might be on that list. Lucas felt the bottom drop out of his world. Are you saying... I'm saying be careful, and maybe start looking for a good lawyer. Arya's expression was pained. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more, but right now I can barely protect myself. After she left, Lucas sat in his suddenly empty apartment, staring at Sophia's drawing on the refrigerator. The stick figure in the blue dress seemed to mock him, now a reminder of how quickly dreams could crumble when reality intruded. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Sophia's asking when Miss Arya will be back. What should I tell her? Lucas stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Tell her Miss Arya had to go take care of some important business. We'll talk more when I pick her up. But as he sat surrounded by the order Arya had brought to his chaotic life, Lucas wondered if Sophia would ever see their mysterious house guest again. And despite everything he'd just learned, he found himself hoping desperately that she would. Sophia's fever started on Sunday night, 2 days after Arya had left. Lucas noticed it during their bedtime routine when Sophia felt unusually warm against his shoulder as he read her favorite story about a brave princess who saved her kingdom through cleverness rather than magic. My head hurts, Papa, she whispered, her usual bright energy dimmed by illness. Lucas felt her forehead with the back of his hand, a skill learned through 3 years of single parenthood, and confirmed what he'd suspected. Her temperature was rising, and her cheeks were flushed with the telltale signs of fever. Let's get you some medicine, Princesa, he said, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. Sick children always frightened him, bringing back memories of the helpless feeling he'd experienced during Maria's final illness. As he measured out children's acetaminophen and encouraged Sophia to drink water, Lucas found himself wishing Arya was still there. Not just for the extra pair of hands, but for the calm competence she'd displayed in caring for others. In 3 short days, she'd somehow become integral to their evening routines, and her absence left their small apartment feeling incomplete. Sophia's fever worsened during the night. Lucas dozed fitfully in the chair beside her bed, waking every hour to check her temperature and offer sips of water. By Monday morning, her fever had spiked to 39 degrees Celsius, and she was listless and crying. Lucas called in sick to both his jobs, a financial blow he could ill afford but a necessary one. Sophia needed him, and he wouldn't trust anyone else with her care when she was this sick. He was preparing to take her to the community health center when an unexpected knock came at his door. Arya? He opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, wearing different clothes, simpler, less obviously expensive, and carrying a pharmacy bag and a container that smelled like fresh soup. Elena told me Sophia was sick, she said without preamble. I brought medicine and Lugo. May I come in? Lucas stepped aside, too surprised and relieved to question her presence. How did you know what kind of medicine to bring? I called Dr. Santos, Elena's neighbor, who's a pediatrician. I described Sophia's symptoms, and she gave me a list. Arya moved immediately to Sophia's bedside, her manner efficient but gentle. Hello, sweetheart. Papa told me you're not feeling well. Sophia managed a weak smile. Miss Arya, you came back. Of course I came back. I heard my favorite girl was sick, and sick girls need extra care. Arya felt Sophia's forehead with the same natural gesture Lucas had used, then checked her pulse at her wrist, with the competence of someone who'd done this before. "You know how to take care of sick children," Lucas observed. "I used to volunteer at a children's hospital." Arya replied, preparing a cool compress for Sophia's forehead. "Before my family decided my time was better spent on board meetings and charity galas." Over the next several hours, Arya took charge of Sophia's care with quiet authority. She maintained a fever log, administered medications on schedule, and kept Sophia comfortable with cool baths and constant hydration. Her natural maternal instincts, suppressed by years of corporate responsibilities, emerged fully in the presence of a sick child. "Tell me about the princess again," Sophia requested weakly during one of her lucid moments. "Which princess?" Arya asked, settling into the chair beside the bed. "The one who saved herself. Mama used to tell me that story, but I can't remember all of it." Lucas felt his throat tighten. He'd tried to maintain Maria's storytelling traditions, but his versions never quite captured the magic his wife had brought to the tales. "Once upon a time," Arya began, her voice taking on the cadence of a natural storyteller, "there was a princess who lived in a tall tower, not because she was trapped, but because she wanted to see everything in her kingdom." As Arya wove the familiar tale, Lucas found himself mesmerized, not just by her storytelling ability, but by the transformation that had come over her. The corporate executive he'd glimpsed through her business card had disappeared, replaced by someone whose primary concern was comforting a sick child. The princess didn't wait for someone to rescue her, Arya continued. She used her intelligence and her courage and her kindness to solve her own problems and help her people. "Like Mama," Sophia whispered. "Exactly like Mama," Arya agreed softly, "and like you when you grow up." By evening, Sophia's fever had broken. She was sitting up in bed, asking for real food instead of just broth, and showing signs of her usual spirited personality. Lucas felt the familiar relief that came with watching his daughter recover from illness, but this time the relief was mixed with gratitude for Arya's presence. "Thank you," he said as they sat together in the kitchen while Sophia dozed peacefully. "I don't know what I would have done without your help today." "You would have managed perfectly well," Arya replied. "You're a wonderful father, Lucas. Sophia is lucky to have you. She kept asking for you. After you left, I mean. Every day she'd ask when you were coming back." Arya's expression grew pained. "I shouldn't have come back. It just makes everything more complicated." "For who?" "For all of us." Arya stood and began cleaning the kitchen with the same efficiency she'd brought to Sophia's care. "I've been dealing with my board of directors for the past 2 days. They're not pleased with my disappearance, and they're threatening to take legal action to force me back into compliance with their plans." "Can they do that?" "They can try. I own 51% of the company, which gives me majority control, but they control most of the operational decisions. And they have allies, me father's old business partners, investors who have significant influence." Arya's hands moved automatically as she spoke, organizing and cleaning with nervous energy. "They've made it clear that my continued absence will have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Arya hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a legal document. "They're threatening to declare me mentally incompetent to make business decisions. It's a long shot legally, but they have enough influence to make the process very ugly and very public." Lucas read the first few paragraphs of the document, his comprehension limited by the complex legal language. "This is because you don't want to marry their chosen business partner. It's because I'm challenging their authority. The marriage is just the mechanism they're using to maintain control." Arya sat back down heavily. "In their world, Lucas, women, even wealthy women, are expected to be compliant. My rebellion threatens their entire power structure. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know." For the first time since he'd known her, Arya looked truly vulnerable. "Going back means giving up any hope of living my own life. But staying means potentially losing everything my grandfather built, everything my family worked for." Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was soft, unmarked by manual labor, but her grip was strong and warm. "What do you want to do?" "I want to stay here," she said immediately, then caught herself. But that's not realistic. I can't build a life hiding from my responsibilities. What if you weren't hiding? What if you were choosing? Arya looked at him questioningly. I mean, what if instead of running away from your old life, you chose to build a new one, on your own terms? With what? If they succeed in removing me from the company, I'll have nothing. You'll have yourself, your intelligence, your skills, your ability to care for people. Lucas gestured around their modest apartment. It's not much, but it's honest. And it's yours to build however you want. Arya squeezed his hand, and Lucas felt something electric pass between them. Not just attraction, though that was certainly present, but recognition. They were both single parents in their own way, she caring for Sophia, she caring for a legacy that had been thrust upon her, both struggling to balance responsibility with personal happiness. Lucas, she said softly, there's something else. Something about your garage that you need to know. Before she could continue, Sophia called from her bedroom. Papa, Miss Arya, I'm hungry. They looked at each other and smiled, the serious conversation momentarily displaced by the demanding needs of a recovering 6-year-old. We should feed her, Arya said. And then we should talk, Lucas replied, about everything. As they moved together to prepare dinner for Sophia, Lucas realized that somewhere in the span of caring for his sick daughter, Arya had stopped being a mysterious stranger and had become something much more dangerous to his carefully constructed single-parent life. She had become someone he couldn't imagine living without. The question now was whether she felt the same way, and whether either of them was brave enough to fight for the possibility of a future together. After Sophia had eaten and fallen back into peaceful sleep, Lucas and Arya returned to the kitchen table where the legal documents lay scattered between them like accusations. The conversation they'd postponed during Sophia's illness could no longer wait. You said there was something about my garage I needed to know, Lucas prompted, though part of him dreaded hearing the answer. Arya pulled out her phone and showed him a series of official-looking documents. These are acquisition proposals that were submitted to our board last month. Properties throughout Tondo that are being evaluated for potential development. Lucas scrolled through the documents, his heart sinking as he recognized addresses throughout his neighborhood. Mrs. Santos's apartment building, Miguel's corner store, the community center where Sophia played with her friends, and there, listed among dozens of other properties, was Rodriguez Auto Repair. They want to tear down the garage? He asked, though the answer was obvious from the development plans showing luxury condominiums where his workplace currently stood. Not just the garage, this entire block. Arya's voice was heavy with guilt. It's part of a massive redevelopment project that's been in planning for 2 years. The board sees it as a major profit opportunity, buy low in a working-class neighborhood, demolish everything, and build high-end housing for Manila's growing affluent population. Lucas felt nauseated. And you knew about this when you came here? No, I swear I didn't know. Arya's denial was passionate. I rarely attend board meetings anymore, and they've been making decisions without consulting me. I only found out when I started looking into why those asset recovery people were asking questions about your garage. But you could stop it. You own the majority of the company. Theoretically, yes, but the board has been systematically excluding me from operational decisions for months. They've structured things so that this project can move forward under existing development authorities that don't require majority shareholder approval. Lucas stared at the documents, trying to process the implications. Everything he'd worked for, his job, his community, Sophia's school and friends, could disappear to make room for condominiums that people like him could never afford. When? He asked simply. The initial acquisition offers go out next week. Property owners will have 30 days to accept or face eminent domain proceedings. And Ben, does he know? I don't think so. The offers are being handled through a subsidiary company. Most property owners won't realize they're dealing with Velasco Properties until it's too late to negotiate. Lucas felt anger building, not just at the situation but at Arya's presence in his life during this crisis. Is that why you came here? To scout the property? to see what kind of resistance you might face. No. Arya reached for his hands, but he pulled away. Lucas, please. I found out about this after I was already staying here. When I realized the connection, I tried to find a way to stop it. Tried how? I called an emergency board meeting yesterday. I demanded they remove the Tondo project from consideration. Arya's voice grew bitter. They voted to override my objection. 8-1. 8-1? I thought you had majority control. I do, in terms of ownership. But the board structure my father established gives voting control to the directors, not the shareholders. It was designed to prevent hostile takeovers, but it also prevents me from making unilateral decisions about company operations. Lucas stood and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood that had been his home for 5 years. Children played in the courtyard below, their laughter echoing off the concrete walls. Laundry hung from windows, and the smell of cooking rice drifted up from various apartments. This community, with all its struggles and small joys, was about to be erased to make room for people who would never know the names of their neighbors. There has to be something you can do, he said without turning around. I'm trying. I've contacted lawyers, accountants, anyone who might help me understand my options. But Lucas, Arya's voice broke slightly. Even if I find a way to stop this project, there will be consequences. The board is already questioning my competence. If I continue to oppose them, they'll escalate their efforts to remove me from control entirely. Lucas turned back to face her, and if they succeed, then not only does the Tondo project proceed, but dozens of other developments like it move forward as well. Entire neighborhoods throughout Metro Manila are on their target list. The weight of the situation settled over Lucas like a physical burden. His personal crisis was just one small part of a much larger corporate strategy that would displace thousands of families. And the woman he was falling in love with was at the center of it all, trapped between her conscience and her legacy. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Why not just let it happen? It would be easier for you to go along with the board's plans." "Because these 3 days with you and Sophia have shown me what I'd be destroying." Arya stood and moved toward him, her expression intense. "I've spent my entire adult life making decisions based on profit margins and shareholder returns. But watching you work, seeing how you care for Sophia, being part of this community, I can't pretend anymore that buildings and balance sheets are more important than people's lives. So, what are you proposing?" "I don't know yet, but I want to fight this, Lucas. Not just for your garage, but for all of it. The problem is, I can't do it alone. The board has resources and legal expertise that I can't match by myself." Lucas looked at the legal documents again, noting the scope and sophistication of the development plans. "What would you need?" "Evidence of malfeasance. Proof that the board is acting against the company's best interests or violating their fiduciary duties. Something that would give me legal grounds to override their decisions." "And if you can't find that evidence?" Arya was quiet for a long moment. "Then I have to choose between my company and my conscience. And honestly, Lucas, after these past few days, that's not as difficult a choice as it should be." Before Lucas could respond, his phone rang. Miguel's name appeared on the screen, and Lucas answered with growing dread. "Lucas, you need to get down here." Miguel's voice was tight with anger. "Ben just got served with papers. Some company wants to buy the garage, and they're not taking no for an answer." "I'll be right there," Lucas said, his stomach dropping. "I have to go," he told Arya. "Ben's getting pressure about the garage sale." "I'm coming with you." "Arya, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I need to see what's happening, and maybe I can help somehow." Against his better judgment, Lucas agreed. As they hurried through the evening streets toward Rodriguez Auto Repair, he wondered if bringing Arya into direct contact with the situation her company had created was wise. But part of him wanted her to see the human cost of corporate decisions, to understand exactly what was at stake. The garage was crowded when they arrived. Ben stood in the center of his workspace, holding legal documents and surrounded by concerned neighbors who had heard about the forced sale. Miguel was there, along with several other small business owners from the area who had apparently received similar offers. They want to buy us out for 30% below market value, Ben was saying, his voice shaky with anger and worry. And if we don't sell, they'll file for eminent domain and take the properties anyway. Who's they? Asked Mrs. Cruz, whose small restaurant occupied the corner building next to the garage. Some subsidiary company I've never heard of, Ben replied. But the legal letterhead looks expensive, and the language is all threats disguised as business opportunities. Lucas felt Arya tense beside him as she recognized the situation she'd warned him about playing out in real time. But before he could decide whether to reveal her connection to the crisis, Ben noticed their arrival. "Lucas, thank God you're here. Maybe you can make sense of this legal nonsense better than I can." As Lucas moved forward to examine the documents, he caught Arya's expression. She looked stricken, as if seeing the fear and confusion on Ben's face had made the abstract concept of development suddenly, painfully real. "Miss Arya." Sophia's voice came from the garage entrance, where Elena had apparently brought her despite the late hour and her recent illness. "What's happening? Why is everyone upset?" The innocent question hung in the air like an accusation. Lucas looked from his daughter to Arya to the frightened faces of his neighbors, and realized that the comfortable fantasy of the past week was about to shatter completely. Because now Arya would have to choose between the life she'd discovered with them and the company that bore her family's name, and Lucas was terribly afraid he already knew which choice she would make. The community meeting at Rodriguez Auto Repair lasted until nearly midnight. Lucas watched in growing despair as Ben spread out the legal documents, each page representing another nail in the coffin of their small neighborhood. Property owners shared similar stories, official letters with aggressive timelines, legal language designed to intimidate, and buyout offers that barely covered the cost of relocating to comparable properties elsewhere in the city. Arya remained silent throughout the discussion, standing at the back of the group where shadows partly concealed her face. Lucas could see the tension in her posture, the way her hands clenched and released as neighbors described their fears about losing their homes and businesses. "The thing is," Ben said, his voice heavy with resignation, "I can't afford to fight this. My lawyer looked at the papers and said, if they file for eminent domain, I'll get even less money and have to pay legal fees on top of it." "What about the rest of us?" asked Mrs. Cruz. "If we all refuse to sell, can they still force us out?" Miguel, who had been researching property law on his phone, looked up grimly. "According to what I'm reading, if they can prove the development serves a public interest like increasing tax revenue or providing housing, they can claim eminent domain on entire blocks." "Public interest," Elena scoffed. "Luxury condominiums that none of us could afford to live in. How is that public interest?" Lucas felt the familiar helplessness that came with being trapped by forces beyond his control. But this time, the feeling was amplified by the knowledge that someone he cared about was connected to those forces. After the neighbors began dispersing to their homes, Lucas lingered to help Ben secure the garage for the night. Arya waited by the door, her silence now conspicuous in the nearly empty space. "Ben," Lucas said carefully, "what if someone could intervene? Someone with connections to the development company." Ben looked up from the papers he was organizing. "You know someone like that?" Lucas glanced at Arya. "Maybe, but it would be complicated." "Complicated how?" Before Lucas could answer, Arya stepped forward. "Ben, I need to tell you something about who I am and how I'm connected to this situation." Over the next 20 minutes, Arya explained her identity, her family's company, and her position as majority shareholder in Velasco Properties. Ben's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching anger. "So you're telling me," Ben said slowly, "that the woman who's been sleeping on Lucas's couch owns the company that's trying to steal my garage?" "It's not that simple." "It sounds pretty simple to me," Ben interrupted. "Your people are threatening to destroy our neighborhood, and you've been playing house with Lucas while it was happening." "Ben," Lucas intervened, "she didn't know about the project when she first came here, and she's trying to stop it." "Trying how? By attending community meetings and feeling sorry for us?" Arya's face flushed, but she met Ben's angry gaze directly. By risking everything I have to fight my own board of directors, by potentially losing control of my family's company to prevent this development from moving forward. And what does that get us? Even if you succeed, what's to stop another company from trying the same thing next year? The question hung in the air, and Lucas realized Ben had identified the core problem. Even if Arya could stop this particular development, their neighborhood remained vulnerable to similar threats. The real issue wasn't just Velasco properties, it was the entire system that allowed wealthy developers to displace working-class communities without meaningful resistance. "You're right," Arya said quietly. "Stopping this project isn't enough, but it's a start." After Ben left, Lucas and Arya walked home through streets that now felt different to him. Every building, every small business, every apartment complex looked precarious, temporary. The stability he'd taken for granted, his job, Sophia's school, their community of friends, could disappear with the stroke of a pen in some corporate boardroom. "What are you thinking?" Arya asked, as they climbed the stairs to his apartment. "I'm thinking about Sophia's future," Lucas replied honestly. "About what kind of world we're leaving for her if people like your board of directors can just decide that neighborhoods like this don't matter." "Lucas." "No, let me finish." He stopped on the landing outside his door, needing to say this before they went inside where Sophia might overhear. "I care about you, Arya. More than I should, considering how complicated this is. But I have to think about my daughter first." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I'm not sure you do." Lucas's frustration boiled over. "You have choices, Arya. You can fight your board or work with them. You can keep your company or walk away from it. You can stay here or go back to your old life. But Sophia and Iwe don't have those kinds of options. This is our life. This is all we have." Arya's eyes filled with tears. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever happens with the development project, you need to be sure about what you want. Because Sophia's already attached to you, and I can't let her get hurt when you decide this experiment in regular life isn't worth the cost." Inside the apartment, they found Sophia awake in her bed, having been awakened by the late-night activity and adult conversations she didn't understand. "Papa, why was everyone upset at Mr. Ben's garage?" she asked, as Lucas tucked her back into bed. "Some people want to buy Mr. Ben's garage, and he doesn't want to sell it," Lucas explained simply. "Why don't they just buy a different garage?" The innocent logic of a 6-year-old made Lucas smile despite his heavy heart. "It's complicated, Princessa. Will Mr. Ben have to sell his garage?" "I don't know." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then asked the question Lucas had been dreading. "If Mr. Ben sells his garage, will you have to find a new job?" "Maybe, but don't worry about that, okay? Papa will always take care of you, no matter what happens." "Will Miss Arya still live with us if you get a new job?" Lucas glanced at Arya, who was standing in the doorway listening to their conversation. "That's up to Miss Arya, Anak." "I want her to stay," Sophia said firmly. "She makes our family better." After Sophia fell back asleep, Lucas and Arya sat at the kitchen table with cups of tea, both lost in their own thoughts. The legal documents from the community meeting lay between them, a reminder of the impossible situation they faced. "I called my lawyer tonight," Arya said eventually, "while you were helping Ben lock up the garage. And there might be a way to challenge the board's authority. If I can prove they're acting in bad faith, making decisions that prioritize their personal interests over the company's welfare, I might be able to override their votes." "What would you need to prove that?" "Evidence that they're personally profiting from the development deals, kickbacks, insider trading, anything that shows corruption." Arya's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "My lawyer thinks there's a good chance such evidence exists. Development projects this size usually involve multiple layers of financial arrangements. And if you find this evidence, then I can stop the Tondo project and potentially remove several board members for breach of fiduciary duty." Arya met his eyes. "But Lucas, pursuing this means declaring war on people who have been my family's business partners for decades. If I'm wrong, or if I can't prove what I suspect, they'll destroy me." And if you don't pursue it, then your neighborhood gets demolished. Hundreds of families lose their homes. And I spend the rest of my life knowing I had the power to stop it, but was too afraid to try. Lucas studied her face, seeing determination mixed with fear. What do you need from me? Nothing. This is my fight. That's not true. This affects Sophia's life, my job, our community. We're already part of it, whether we want to be or not. Arya reached across the table and took his hand. Lucas, if I do this, if I really commit to fighting them, there's no going back. Win or lose, my old life is over. The board will never trust me again, and most of Manila's business community will see me as a traitor to my class. What does that mean for you? It means building something new, maybe with you, if you'll have me, maybe somewhere else if things don't work out between us. But either way, it means choosing love over money, people over profit. Lucas felt his heart race at her words, but forced himself to think practically. Arya, you're talking about giving up billions of pesos for a mechanic and his 6-year-old daughter. I'm talking about giving up a life that was never really mine for a chance at something real. Arya's grip on his hand tightened. I've never been as happy as I've been these past few days. I've never felt as useful or needed or genuinely cared for. If that's not worth fighting for, then nothing is. Before Lucas could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. The sender was unknown, but the message made his blood run cold. We know she's staying with you. Tell Ms. Velasco that hiding won't solve her problems. Some things are bigger than both of you. He showed the message to Arya, whose face went pale. They found me. Who found you? The board. They're investigators. Arya stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking completely. Lucas, I have to go. Being here puts you and Sophia in danger. What kind of danger? I don't know, but these people play for keeps, if they're willing to threaten you to get to me. Arya moved toward the couch, where her few possessions lay. I should have left days ago. I should never have come back. Running away won't solve anything, Lucas said, surprising himself with his calm tone. And it won't protect Sophia if they're already using us as leverage against you. Then what do you suggest? Lucas looked at the threatening text message again, then at the legal documents scattered across his table, then at Sophia's bedroom door where his daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her world was crumbling around her. In that moment, he made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a week ago. I suggest we fight back. Lucas, you don't understand what you're saying. These people have unlimited resources, political connections, legal teams, and we have something they don't. Lucas stood and moved to the refrigerator, where Sophia's family drawing still hung among her other artwork. We have the truth, and we have people who care about what happens to this community. That's not enough against corporate power. Maybe not, but it's what we have. Lucas turned back to face her. Arya, you said you needed evidence of corruption to challenge the board. What if we could find that evidence together? How? I don't know yet, but Ben's been in this neighborhood for 20 years. Miguel knows every small business owner in a 5-block radius. Elena has connections throughout the community that go back decades. If there's something fishy about this development project, someone has seen something, heard something, noticed something. Arya looked skeptical. Corporate corruption isn't usually that visible at the street level. Maybe not the corruption itself, but the effects of it are. Properties being surveyed before owners know they're for sale. City inspectors suddenly finding violations in buildings that have passed inspection for years. Permits being fast-tracked through departments that usually take months to process applications. You think someone's been greasing the wheels? I think when this much money is involved, people get careless. And when people get careless, they leave evidence. Arya sat back down, her expression shifting from resignation to something that might have been hope. Even if we found evidence, I'd still have to present it to the board. That means revealing that I've been working against them. Then you reveal it, publicly, make it impossible for them to ignore or suppress. Lucas, if I do that, if I really commit to this fight, there's no guarantee we'll win. I could lose everything and still not save your neighborhood. But if you don't try, we'll definitely lose. and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to fight for what you believed in. They were interrupted by the sound of Sophia's bedroom door opening. She appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes and looking confused by the late-night conversation. "Papa, Miss Arya, why are you still awake?" "Just talking, Princessa," Lucas said gently. "Go back to bed." "Are you fighting?" Sophia's 6-year-old intuition was remarkably accurate. "No, we're not fighting. We're trying to solve a problem." "What kind of problem?" Lucas looked at Arya, then back at his daughter. "How do you explain corporate greed and community displacement to a 6-year-old?" "Some people want to change our neighborhood," he said carefully, "and we're trying to decide what to do about it." "Do you want them to change it?" "No." "Then tell them not to." Sophia's solution was characteristically direct. "It's more complicated than that, Anak." "Why?" Lucas found himself without an answer that wouldn't frighten her. But Arya stepped in with the kind of gentle honesty that had made Sophia trust her from the beginning. "Because sometimes, Sophia, people with a lot of money think they can make decisions for people who don't have as much money, and sometimes they're right, because they have more power. But sometimes, if the people without as much money work together and are very brave, they can change things." "Are you going to be brave, Miss Arya?" Arya looked at Sophia's earnest face, then at Lucas, then around the modest apartment that had become more of a home to her than her family's mansion ever was. "Yes," she said quietly, "I think I am." After Sophia returned to bed, Lucas and Arya spent the rest of the night planning their strategy. They would spend the next day gathering information from the community who had been contacted about property sales, what city officials had been involved, whether anyone had noticed unusual activity around the development sites. "There's something else," Arya said, as dawn began to lighten the sky outside their window. "Something I haven't told you about the board meeting where they overrode my objection to the Tondo project." "What?" "One of the directors made a comment about teaching me the cost of defiance. At the time, I thought he meant business consequences, but now, with that threatening text message." "You think they're planning something more direct?" "I think they're desperate. This development project represents a massive profit opportunity, and my opposition threatens more than just this deal. If other shareholders see that I'm willing to challenge the board's authority, it could inspire similar resistance to future projects." Lucas nodded. "So stopping you isn't just about this neighborhood, it's about maintaining their control over the entire company." "Exactly, which means they'll escalate their pressure until I either give in or they find a way to remove me entirely. Then we need to move fast." "Lucas," Arya said, her voice serious, "before we commit to this, I need you to understand something. If they succeed in removing me from the company or discrediting me publicly, I'll have nothing left. No money, no influence, no way to help you or Sophia or anyone in this community." "You'll have us," Lucas said simply. "That might not be enough." "It's enough for me." Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box old worn, containing the wedding ring Maria had worn until the day she died. "I was thinking about selling this to raise money for legal fees to fight the garage sale, but maybe there's a better use for it." Arya stared at the ring box in shock. "Lucas, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that whether we win or lose this fight, I want you to stay. Not as a house guest or a temporary refuge from your corporate problems, but as part of our family. Sophia already thinks of you that way. And he took a deep breath, "I love you, Arya. I love who you are when you're here with us, and I want to build something together that's bigger than either of our individual problems." Tears streamed down Arya's face as she looked at the ring that represented Lucas's greatest sacrifice, letting go of his past to embrace their future. "I love you too," she whispered, "but Lucas, I can't take Maria's ring. That belongs to Sophia when she's older." Maria would have wanted it to go to someone who loves Sophia as much as she did. Lucas opened the box, revealing a simple gold band that gleamed in the morning light. "And someone who loves me enough to risk everything for our family." As Arya slipped the ring onto her finger, Lucas realized that whatever happened with the corporate battle ahead, they had already won something precious. They had chosen each other, and they had chosen love over fear. Now they just had to prove that love was strong enough to defeat the forces arrayed against them. The next morning brought an unexpected development that changed everything. Lucas was preparing breakfast when Miguel burst through the apartment door without knocking, his face flushed with excitement and anger. "Lucas, you need to see this," he said, thrusting a newspaper into his hands. The front page of the Manila Bulletin featured a large photograph of Arya at what appeared to be an elegant party, wearing an expensive gown and standing next to a man in an expensive suit. The headline read, "Manila's most eligible heiress. Velasco Properties majority owner missing after rejecting arranged engagement." Lucas felt the blood drain from his face as he read the article aloud for Arya, who had emerged from the bathroom at the sound of Miguel's urgent voice. Arya Magdalena Velasco, 28, majority shareholder and heir to the Velasco Properties empire, has been missing for over a week following her dramatic departure from an engagement party arranged by the company's board of directors. Sources close to the family report that Ms. Velasco fled the event after publicly refusing to announce her engagement to businessman Ricardo Montemayor, whose construction company has been a major partner in several recent Velasco developments. The article continued with details about Arya's background or education at international business schools, her inheritance of controlling interest in the company following her father's death 2 years earlier, and the ongoing tensions between her and the board of directors over the company's direction. The board has declined to comment on Ms. Velasco's whereabouts, the article concluded, but sources suggest that her disappearance has created significant uncertainty about several major development projects currently under consideration. Lucas looked up from the newspaper to find Arya staring at him with an expression of horror and embarrassment. "Now you know everything," she said quietly. "Arya," Miguel said, his voice carefully controlled, "please tell me this is some kind of mistake. Please tell me you're not actually the woman whose company is trying to steal our neighborhood." Before Arya could answer, Sofia appeared in the hallway, drawn by the sound of raised voices. "What's wrong? Why does Uncle Miguel look angry?" Lucas quickly folded the newspaper, but the damage was done. Miguel's expression had shifted from anger to something approaching betrayal as he looked between Lucas and Arya. "You knew," Miguel said to Lucas. "You knew who she was, and you didn't tell me." "Miguel, it's complicated." "No, it's not complicated. It's simple. She's the enemy, and you brought her into our community, into our homes, around our children." Miguel's voice rose with each word. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? What people are going to think when they find out you've been harboring the woman who's trying to destroy our neighborhood?" "I'm not trying to destroy anything," Arya said, stepping forward. "I'm trying to stop the development project." "Oh, really? And how exactly are you doing that from here? By playing house with Lucas while your board of directors sends out eviction notices?" The accusation hit its mark. Arya flinched as if she'd been slapped, and Lucas felt his own anger rising. "That's enough, Miguel. Arya's been trying to help." "Help?" "Lucas, open your eyes. She's been using you, playing the helpless damsel in distress while her people destroy everything we've worked for." "Uncle Miguel," Sophia said in the small voice she used when adults were fighting, "please don't yell at Miss Arya. She's nice." Miguel's expression softened slightly when he looked at Sophia, but his anger remained focused on Arya. "Sophia, sweetheart, Miss Arya isn't who we thought she was." "What do you mean?" Lucas knelt down to Sophia's level, trying to find words that would explain the situation without terrifying her. "Remember how we talked about some people wanting to buy Mr. Ben's garage? Miss Arya's family owns the company that wants to buy it." Sophia looked confused. "But Miss Arya lives with us. Why would she want to buy Mr. Ben's garage?" "She doesn't want to buy it," Lucas said carefully, "but the people she works with do." "Then why doesn't she just tell them not to?" The innocent question highlighted the fundamental issue that had been tearing at Arya for days. Why couldn't she just stop the development? Why was it so complicated to do what was obviously right? "Because," Arya said, kneeling down beside Lucas to face Sophia directly. Sometimes when you inherit something from your family, you also inherit the problems that come with it. And sometimes the people who are supposed to help you make decisions don't want to listen to what you think is right. That's not fair, Sophia said, with the moral clarity of childhood. No, it's not fair, but that's why your papa and I are trying to fix it. Miguel watched this exchange with growing skepticism. And how exactly are you planning to fix it? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're hiding here while your company moves forward with plans to destroy our neighborhood. We're gathering evidence, Lucas said, trying to find proof that the board is acting corruptly so Arya can challenge their authority. Evidence of what? Arya stood and faced Miguel directly. Evidence that board members are personally profiting from the development deals in ways that violate their fiduciary duties to the company and its shareholders. And if you find this evidence, then I can use it to override their decisions and stop the Tondo project. Miguel looked skeptical. And if you can't find it, then we try a different approach, Lucas said firmly. But we don't give up. We? Miguel's eyebrows rose. Lucas, what exactly is your relationship with her? Lucas glanced at Arya, then at Sophia, then back at his oldest friend. We're engaged. The silence that followed was deafening. Miguel stared at them in shock. Sophia clapped her hands together in delight, and Arya looked simultaneously happy and terrified. Engaged, Miguel repeated. You've known her for a week, and half of that time you didn't even know who she really was. Sometimes a week is enough, Lucas replied, taking Arya's hand and noticing Maria's ring on her finger for the first time. The sight of it there felt both right and heartbreaking. Papa! Sophia threw herself into his arms. Does this mean Miss Arya is going to be my new mama? If she wants to be, Lucas said, looking at Arya. I would love that more than anything, Arya replied, her voice thick with emotion. Miguel shook his head in disbelief. Lucas, you're making a mistake. A huge mistake. This woman comes from a completely different world. When this crisis is over, she'll go back to her mansions and her board meetings, and you'll be left here with a broken heart and a daughter who doesn't understand why her new mother disappeared. That's not going to happen, Arya said firmly. How can you be sure? Because I'm giving up that world. Whatever happens with the company, whatever the board decides to do, I'm staying here, with Lucas and Sophia. You're willing to give up billions of pesos for a mechanic and his daughter. I'm willing to give up a life that was never really mine for a chance at something real. Miguel studied their faces, looking for signs of deception or naivety. What he saw instead was determination mixed with love, and perhaps that was what finally convinced him. All right, he said slowly. Let's say I believe you. Let's say you really are committed to stopping this development and staying in our community. What do you need from us? Information, Arya replied immediately. Anything unusual you've noticed about how this project has been handled? City inspectors, permit applications, property surveys, meetings with officials, anything that doesn't follow normal procedures. And then what? Then we compile it into evidence that proves the board has been engaging in corrupt practices to push this development through without proper oversight. Miguel was quiet for a moment, considering. Finally, he nodded. I'll make some calls. There are people in the community who notice things, who keep track of when city officials show up where they're not expected. Thank you, Arya said gratefully. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after we've saved our neighborhood. Miguel turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Lucas, I hope you know what you're doing. After Miguel left, Lucas and Arya sat at the kitchen table with Sophia between them, the newspaper spread out where they could all see Arya's photograph. You look really pretty in this picture, Sophia observed, but you look happier here with us. I am happier here with you, Arya confirmed. Much happier. When we get married, can I be the flower girl? Of course you can be the flower girl, Lucas said, but first we have some work to do. As if summoned by his words, Lucas's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but when he answered, the voice was familiar, cold, authoritative, and distinctly threatening. Mr. Reyes, this is Arya Velasco, chairman of the Velasco Properties Board of Directors. I believe you have something that belongs to us." Lucas felt his stomach clench as he recognized the voice on the phone. Harrison Velasco, Arya's uncle, and the man who had effectively been running Velasco Properties since her father's death. Arya's face went pale when she heard the name, and she quickly moved Sofia out of earshot before returning to listen to the conversation. "Mr. Velasco," Lucas said carefully, putting the phone on speaker so Arya could hear. "I'm not sure what you think I have that belongs to you." "Don't play games with me, Mr. Reyes. My niece has been missing for over a week, and our investigators have confirmed that she's been staying in your apartment. I want her returned immediately." "Returned? She's not property, Mr. Velasco. She's an adult who can make her own decisions about where she wants to stay." Harrison's laugh was cold and humorless. "Is that what she's told you? That she's free to make her own decisions? Mr. Reyes, my niece is mentally unstable. She's been under psychiatric care for months, and her recent behavior running away from family obligations, associating with people far beneath her social station is evidence of a serious psychological breakdown." Arya's eyes widened in shock and anger. She grabbed the phone from Lucas's hands. "Uncle Harrison, that's a lie, and you know it. I'm not mentally unstable, and I haven't been under psychiatric care." "Arya, my dear, you're clearly not thinking rationally. Running away from your responsibilities, rejecting a marriage that would secure your future, hiding in a slum, these are not the actions of a stable person. These are the actions of someone who refuses to be controlled by a board of directors more interested in profit than people. Profit is what built this company, Arya. Profit is what provides jobs for thousands of people, housing for families, economic development for the entire city. Your romantic notions about helping the poor are admirable but impractical. Destroying neighborhoods to build luxury housing isn't economic development, Uncle. It's gentrification. It's progress, and it's happening whether you cooperate or not." Harrison's tone turned threatening. "Mr. Reyes, I'm prepared to offer you a substantial sum of money to ensure my niece's safe return to her family. 50,000 pesos, cash, for bringing her to our offices within the next 2 hours." Lucas felt insulted by the assumption that he could be bought, but also terrified by the amount of money being offered so casually. 50,000 pesos represented months of income for his family. "She's not for sale," he said firmly, "and she doesn't want to go with you. Then perhaps you'd be interested in knowing that the property development project affecting your neighborhood has been accelerated. Eviction notices will be served tomorrow morning instead of next week. Unless, of course, my niece returns to fulfill her family obligations." Arya grabbed the phone again. "You can't do that. I'm still the majority shareholder. I haven't signed off on accelerating the timeline." "Actually, you have. The power of attorney documents your father had you sign when you inherited the company include provisions for emergency decision-making when the primary shareholder is deemed incompetent. Dr. Ramirez's psychiatric evaluation from last month provides the necessary medical justification." "What psychiatric evaluation? I never saw any Dr. Ramirez." "According to our records, you did, and his report indicates severe depression, anxiety, and decision-making impairment that makes you temporarily unfit to manage company affairs." Lucas watched Arya's face cycle through shock, anger, and finally, grim understanding. "You forged a psychiatric evaluation. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have a legitimate medical report from a licensed psychiatrist stating that you require immediate family intervention and medical supervision." "That's fraud, Uncle Harrison. That's family looking out for family, Arya. Now, are you going to come home voluntarily, or do we need to involve the authorities? Because I assure you, having you committed for psychiatric evaluation will be much more traumatic for everyone involved than simply returning to discuss your future rationally." Arya looked at Lucas with desperation in her eyes. The trap had been perfectly constructed, a forged psychiatric evaluation that would allow the board to have her declared incompetent, removing her from any decision-making authority while they proceeded with their development plans. "I need time to think," she said into the phone. "You have 1 hour. After that, I call the police and report a mentally unstable woman who needs immediate psychiatric intervention. And Mr. Reyes, I hope you understand that harboring someone who has been declared mentally incompetent could result in serious legal consequences for you." The line went dead, leaving Lucas and Arya staring at each other in stunned silence. "Can they really do that?" Lucas asked. "Have you committed based on a forged psychiatric report?" "If they have the right paperwork and the right judge, yes." Mental health laws are designed to allow family members to intervene when someone is genuinely ill, but they can be abused by people with enough money and influence. "So, what do we do?" Arya was quiet for a moment, thinking furiously. Then her expression shifted to something Lucas had never seen before: cold, calculating determination. "We beat them at their own game," she said, reaching for her phone. "Uncle Harrison isn't the only one who can play dirty." She dialed a number from memory, waiting as it rang. When someone answered, her voice took on the authoritative tone of someone accustomed to giving orders. "Elena Santos, this is Arya Velasco. I need you to call an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. Full board, all shareholders of record, and I want legal representation present." She listened for a moment, then continued. "Yes, I know I've been missing. That's exactly what we need to discuss. 2 o'clock at the main office. And Elena Maki, sure you have security present. This is going to get ugly." After hanging up, she turned to Lucas. "I'm calling their bluff. If Uncle Harrison wants to play the mental competency card, he can do it in front of the full board and legal counsel. Is that safe? What if they really do have you committed? Then we make sure they can't. But first, I need to get something from my apartment documents that will prove the psychiatric evaluation is fraudulent." "Your apartment? Arya, that's probably where they expect you to go. Which is why we're going to go together, with witnesses." Lucas looked toward Sophia's bedroom, where his daughter was playing quietly with her toys, unaware that their entire future hung in the balance. "What about Sophia? Elena will watch her, and Miguel can come with us as backup." Arya's expression was fierce. "Lucas, I should have done this days ago. I should have faced them directly, instead of hiding here and letting them think they could intimidate me. You weren't hiding, you were building a life worth fighting for. And now it's time to fight for it." As they prepared to leave for what might be the most important confrontation of their lives, Lucas realized that the woman he'd fallen in love with was showing him a side of herself he'd never seen, not the vulnerable refugee from corporate politics, but the steel-willed businesswoman who had inherited a billion-peso empire. The question now was whether that strength would be enough to defeat the forces arrayed against them, or whether love would prove insufficient against the raw power of corporate greed. Either way, Lucas knew there was no turning back. They would face Harrison Velasco and the board of directors together, and whatever happened next would determine not just their future, but the future of everyone in their community. "Ready?" Arya asked, taking his hand. "Ready," Lucas replied, though he'd never felt less prepared for anything in his life. Together, they walked toward a battle that would determine whether love could truly triumph over money, or whether fairy tales only existed in the stories they told Sophia at bedtime. 6 months later, Lucas stood in the garden of a small chapel in Antipolo, adjusting his borrowed tie for the 3rd time as guests gathered for his wedding. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the simple wooden benches where his neighbors from Tondo sat alongside what remained of Arya's family and business associates. It had been a tumultuous half-year since that confrontational board meeting where Arya had faced down her uncle and the directors who thought they could control her life. The psychiatric evaluation had indeed been forged, a fact that became clear when Dr. Ramirez, when contacted directly, confirmed he had never examined Arya Velasco. The revelation had led to Harrison's resignation and criminal charges, along with the removal of 3 other board members who had been complicit in the scheme. But the victory had come at a cost. Arya had restructured Velasco Properties entirely, selling off several major assets to establish a community development fund and changing the company's focus from luxury developments to affordable housing projects. The board of directors now included community representatives, and all development projects required impact assessments that considered effects on existing residents. The Tondo neighborhood project had been cancelled, replaced with a community improvement initiative that provided low-interest loans for property owners to renovate and upgrade their homes. Rodriguez Auto Repair not only remained open, but had expanded, with Ben as owner-operator and Lucas as head mechanic and part-time business partner. "Papa, you look nervous," Sophia observed, appearing at his side in her flower girl dresser creation of yellow silk that Arya had insisted on having custom made. At 7 years old, Sophia had grown into her role as the bridge between her father's world and Arya's, equally comfortable discussing engine repair and attending charity galas. "Just excited, Princessa," Lucas replied, though nervous was certainly accurate. Despite everything they'd been through together, the formality of the wedding ceremony felt momentous in a way that their quiet cohabitation hadn't. "Miss Arya looks beautiful," Sophia announced, and Lucas turned to see his bride approaching through the garden. Arya had chosen a simple, cream-colored dress that somehow managed to be elegant without being ostentatious, a reflection of how she'd learned to navigate between her privileged background and her chosen life. Her hair was pulled back softly, and she wore Maria's ring on a chain around her neck, having insisted that the wedding band should go to Sophia when she was older. "Ready?" she asked, taking Lucas's hand as they positioned themselves in front of the priest. "Ready," he replied, and this time he meant it completely. The ceremony was brief and personal, with vows they'd written themselves that spoke of building something new together while honoring the past. When Sophia stepped forward to present the rings, she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Now we're really a family." The reception was held in the community center of their Tondo neighborhood, with Elena's adobo and Mrs. Cruz's lumpia served alongside catered dishes that represented Arya's world. Miguel, who had become one of Arya's strongest advocates after seeing her genuine commitment to their community, served as master of ceremonies with his characteristic dry humor. "I have to admit," he said during his toast, "when Lucas first brought home a woman he'd found in a gutter, I thought he'd lost his mind. Now I think maybe he found it." As the evening wound down and guests began to head home, Lucas and Arya sat at a table with Sophia between them, watching the cleanup process and reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. "Any regrets?" Lucas asked, thinking about everything Arya had given up: the lifestyle, the social status, the uncomplicated wealth. "Only one," Arya replied. "I regret that it took me so long to find you." "What are we going to do tomorrow?" Sophia asked, a question that had become her favorite as she anticipated each new day of their life together. "Tomorrow," Arya said, "we're going to work on the new community center plans, and Papa's going to teach me how to change brake pads. And we're going to read the story about the princess who saved herself," Sophia added. "Always," Lucas agreed. As they prepared to leave for their modest honeymooner weekend in Baguio that represented a compromise between Lucas's practical budget and Arya's desire to celebrate properly, Lucas reflected on the hand-carved wooden heart he'd given Arya as a wedding gift. Made from wood salvaged from an old building in their neighborhood, it represented something he'd told her during their vows: that the best things in life were built from simple materials by people who cared enough to put their hearts into the work. The Velasco Properties headquarters downtown still bore Arya's family name, but it now housed a very different kind of company, one that measured success not just in profit margins, but in communities preserved and families helped. It would never generate the massive returns that the old model had produced, but it provided something more valuable: the satisfaction of work that made the world better rather than just richer. 6 months ago, Lucas had been a struggling single father, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and Arya had been a woman trapped by expectations she'd never chosen. Tonight, they were partners in every sense, parents to Sophia, leaders in their community, and builders of a life that honored both love and responsibility. As they walked home through streets that remained unchanged because they'd fought to keep them that way, Lucas realized that their story had become something larger than just a romance between two people from different worlds. It had become proof that sometimes, when people choose love over fear and community over profit, fairy tales can come true. "Papa," Sophia said as they tucked her into bed in the apartment that was now officially home to all three of them. "Thank you for finding Miss Arya in the rain." "Thank you for helping me see that she should stay," Lucas replied. "I love our family," Sophia announced with the confidence of a child who had never doubted that love would find a way to solve any problem. "So do I, Princessa, so do I." Outside their window, the sounds of their neighborhood continued as they always had. Children playing, neighbors calling to each other, the gentle hum of a community that cared for its own. But now those sounds carried a different meaning for Lucas. They were no longer the soundtrack to a life of barely getting by, but the symphony of a life fully lived, surrounded by people who mattered and building something that would last. In the end, that was the greatest treasure of all, not the wealth that Arya had inherited or the love that had brought them together, but the simple knowledge that they had chosen to build something beautiful from the materials they'd been given. And in doing so, they had proven that the most powerful force in the world wasn't money or influence or corporate power. It was the decision to care for each other, one day at a time, with whatever resources you had available and whatever strength you could find in your heart. That was enough. That was everything. That was home.